We are 1 week into Trump's war on Iran, and the mission is still unclear. What is clear, the toll the war is now taking. Today, President Trump traveled to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to witness the dignified transfer of 6 Americans killed in that war. Those service members were struck by an Iranian drone in Kuwait last Sunday. Also today, missile strikes have been reported across the Middle East, landing in Israel, Lebanon, and the United Arab Emirates. This comes as Trump insists that Iran is being beaten to hell. He also claimed that Iran apologized to neighboring countries for striking them only, quote, because of the relentless U.S. and Israeli attack. Meantime, Iran's president rejected a demand by the United States for an unconditional surrender. All of these developments come as Trump himself continues to give conflicting reasons for the administration's decision to go to war in the first place and what its mission really is with Iran. The Atlantic laying out at least 10, including imminent threats, regime change to fulfill God's purpose, and finally, that the Israelis made us do it. Here's Trump over the weekend in his own words.
Our objective is to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime. We have very strong objectives. We projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that. Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. We have another group. They may be dead also, based on reports. If we didn't do it first, they would have done it to Israel. The United States will ensure that whoever leads the country next, Iran will not threaten America or its neighbors, Israel, anybody.
We're doing very well in Iran. You see the result, and it's been amazing.
So, guys, a week of a lot of different rationales, explanations, justifications, plans, proposals. At one point, Donald Trump said he doesn't necessarily care if Iran is a democratic state. At one point, he said he was open to maybe Iran still having a religious leader, maintaining its theocracy so long as he gets to choose the leader. And then on top of that, we saw the reports earlier this week that the U.S. and Israel might consider arming Iranian Kurds to try to topple the regime so that way the U.S. doesn't actually have to have any boots on the ground, which the president at one point also said he's open to having boots on the ground if it requires it.
More than just open to it. NBC News reporting that he's actually very seriously considering it. For people who at home, frankly, Ayman, may not have any idea who the Kurds are, what the significance of that development is, can you spell out for us what could come next there?
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, Iran is a country of 93 million people, so many different ethnicities. Among one of those ethnicities, one of those ethnic groups are the Kurds. There are about 40 million all across the Middle East. There are about 10 million inside Iran. And it's an ethnic minority that is marginalized and discriminated against in many Arab countries, including Iraq and Syria, as well as in Turkey and, as I said, Iran. And I wrote a little bit about this in this op-ed, which the U.S. is now considering arming to try and get these Kurdish rebels to basically take on the Iranian regime. And as somebody who has covered the region, I can tell you firsthand that would be an absolute disaster, because in previous attempts where the U.S. has tried to arm Kurdish rebels to advance its own agenda or its own policy, the Kurds have suffered a lot. In 1991, when Americans told the Kurds to rise up against the dictator at the time, Saddam Hussein, in Iraq, the Kurds did that. They rose up thinking the American military was going to come and get their back, and they didn't. And Saddam ended up quashing that uprising. Tens of thousands were killed, hundreds of thousands more fled across other borders. And so the idea that you're going to arm these rebels to take on the regime in Tehran, which has already demonstrated its willingness to use lethal force against its own people, and think that the Iranian government is not going to try and brutally oppress that, it's just hard to imagine, and I think it's probably one of the dumbest policy proposals I've heard.
So do you think the issue is that the Kurds won't accept that offer, or that they will accept but it'll be doomed?
So I think both. I think actually the Kurds are reluctant to accept that, right? And the Kurds have always been trying to get their own state in the Middle East. And a lot of people have thought that the best way to do that is if they side with the Americans and fight along with the Americans, that the Americans would one day say, fine, we recognize a Kurdistan in these different parts of the Arab world and break up these countries even more. And yet every time they've fought with the Americans or sided with the Americans, they've gotten burned. So this time around, actually, the First Lady of Iraq, who is Kurdish, put out a statement saying the Kurds have suffered a lot. We do not want this. This is not what we want to do. And we do not want to be dragged into America and Israel's war, thinking that it's going to advance Kurdish national interest. So I think that both are true, that the Kurds, a lot of Kurds that I've heard from and that are speaking publicly are saying they're probably not going to go along with this. And secondly, the psyche of what has happened to Kurds in the past by aligning with America only to get burned is so deep, and they're so traumatized by that I don't think they would repeat that
But
again.
it's also geopolitically so volatile. The Turks do not want us to arm the Kurds
Exactly.
and groups that even we have labeled as terrorist groups. It just is really a recipe for disaster, especially if we're going to need to use Turkish airspace and Turkish bases. But what I think it is just a realization that the sweeping goal, the actual goal of regime change, can't be achieved without boots on the ground. And so this is a way to outsource it, a way to not have our own blood and treasure squandered, but we're foisting other people to do the dirty work that they haven't even necessarily agreed to do. So it just shows such a complete lack of planning, which is the total problem with this entire war. The service members that we just saw, that we haven't gotten a good explanation of exactly why they were killed, but we do know that our bases in the Middle East, what about fortifications for the new drone threat? You covered the war during the era of T-walls and sandbags, and it's just a different world now. And so are servicemen and women who are in the region properly protected? That's a huge question that I have.
Can I ask you, Elise, everyone watched the dignified transfer happen only a couple hours ago, and presidents often attend them. They do not always. But this is the first time that President Trump has attended a dignified transfer for a war that he actually started. And I wonder, because you've been around the decision makers, you know the cost of war. If you think at all seeing something like this happen so early on in the fighting will change the calculus, even if it doesn't change it for President Trump, for anyone around him, because he was there, the vice president was there, the first and second lady were there, Susie Wiles was there, Steve Witkoff, Pam Bondi was there. I mean, the entire inner circle stood by and watched these 6 fallen service members go by. Does that do something to people?
It's good that they did, because they need to see the real cost of what going to war and what this war is going to mean. It's going to mean a lot more men and women coming home in that way. Despite what we do and despite our best intentions, that's the harsh reality of it. And far too many members of this administration have been treating it like it's a video game and some way to, exercise their repressed masculinity that they have issues with, I guess. But all of the faux bravado, it really does make me want to puke in my stomach, because there's a certain humility that you should have just for the lives that you're impacting on the ground, and the men and women you are sending to do that, and the moral injury that you are going to cause permanently to them. And I have found the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, I have found his comments to be just utterly disgusting in this regard.
Well, and those comments, Antonia, to your point, the president has said throughout the course of the week, people are going to die.
Right.
He was asked about domestic terrorist attacks. Could that be a thing? And he's like, look, it's war. People are going to die. He's talked about that in the service people. And so there's this element that you wonder if the administration is taking this seriously. I mean, they're joking around about doing this now in Cuba, right? They're running high off of the fact that they did an operation in kidnapped Maduro, brought him to the U.S. They killed the supreme leader of Iran, and now we're in war there. And, that war is not even over. We don't even know if we're going to get out of it. And they're already joking around about attacking Cuba.
Yeah, I mean, joking, but it's also extremely
exactly.
serious. I think that
It's a real threat.
My understanding of what's most likely to unfold in Cuba would be something a bit closer to what we saw happen in Venezuela than what we're seeing transpire in Iran right now. And what I mean by that is that there might be a single sort of action. You're likely to see charges brought against Raul Castro or other high-ranking members of the regime. And Trump keeps hinting that there are negotiations. At times, Cubans have kind of undermined that and acted like the conversations are nowhere near as deep as Rubio and others have tried to project. The truth, who knows where it frankly is, because both sides have been known to tell tales at different points. But Cubans right now, the one thing Trump is saying that is very true is that Cubans are on the brink. The country is in incredibly heartbreaking shape. I have family members who are there right now who were texting me yesterday saying that they have gone more than 2 days without any electricity. If you go 2 days without electricity, that means not just that you're trying to live your life in the dark, it means you can't keep your food in a fridge. And the very little money that Cubans have and the difficult lengths that they go to get like a piece of chicken, I mean, then that thing goes bad. People scrambling for medications to find out if I know anyone who's coming to the island soon so I can make sure that they bring ibuprofen with them. I mean, these things that we take for granted, we can walk outside this building right now and go get them and waste them. People are desperately searching for. And it's really painful for them. And I think so many members of different diasporas, I know Iranian members of the diaspora here in the United States are going through this. Cubans are, Venezuelans have been now for many weeks. You are torn between this desire for freedom and change for your people and this absolute heartbreak that what that requires seems to be more violence and pain and loss for your people. I mean, to hear that there are adults in Cuba right now going day after day without being able to eat any food because of this blockade and the sanctions that have been in place for so long, they are the people paying the real cost. It is not Raul Castro who's not able to eat 3 meals a day. Even though he is, Rubio and Trump's enemy here. He is going to be okay. It's people like my family members, not so much. And so, that's the real cost that happens while you wait to see if war comes. And that's where things stand in Cuba now. But at this point, even people who do not like Trump are like, please, sir, just do whatever it is you keep saying you're going to do because we're trying to live.
And it's affecting everybody here as well. In the U.S., what's happening both in Iran and the uncertainty of what's happening in Cuba, right? Like every day you're waking up to like new headlines, job reports, inflation, oil prices, energy costs in Europe. It's just... Yeah,
I mean, to this question that we've been circling about, like, what will it take to get this administration to think differently, to think about the consequences of their actions? I really don't think it's about empathy. I mean, I wish it were about empathy and about seeing the dignified transfer of our fallen soldiers, for example. I think it's really going to be political blowback because gas prices are rising. Yeah. Gas prices have risen like 15% in the past week. And there are a lot of Americans out there who have no awareness about international affairs. They're just trying to go about their lives. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the polling, it's not even clear that a lot of people have heard that much about the war, let alone the prospective invasion of another country. But they will notice when they go to the gas station and they see that those costs have gone up, that food eventually will probably get more expensive because fertilizer, also a huge amount of fertilizer for the globe, comes through the Strait of Hormuz on Iran's southern coast, and basically all or almost all of the ship traffic there has been shut down. So that's going to come home to America in an election year, and voters are going to push back, right? Normally, I would say, like, voters getting angry at the president over gas prices is a fool's errand because presidents don't control gas prices. Well, they can't make them lower, but it turns out they can make them higher.
Very quickly, too.
Very quickly.
You've already unleashed economic warfare in the form of new taxes, tariffs.
Yes.
Anyway.